LGB. 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 LGB.
They say LGB everywhere I go. LGB. What it means, I don't know. LGB. Whatever it is. LGB. Kamala, help me, please. Please.
Alrighty then.
Thank you. LGB.
That's let's go, Brandon. Right?
LGB.
This means let's go, Brandon.
Go. LGB.
Sounds like let's go, Brandon. I guess.
LGB. All right. Let's go, Brandon.
I am Cornholio.
Chant LGB. Right wing and left wing. LGB. Go, you know the thing. LGB. If you don't sing that back. LGB. And you ain't black. LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
FJB. Let's go, Brandon.
I'm Joe Biden, and I forgot this.
Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this April 3rd, 2024 at 6:52 a.m. Central Daylight Time, and I'm going to be doing a little catch-up on some of the audio recordings I do for Seth Keshel. Before I do that, however, please join me and watch this video made by my sister, Rebecca.
He said something that really hit home about this phenomena of chemtrails.
Manganese will make you kill your mama. How much manganese are you spraying in my neighborhood at night while I'm asleep?
Military and some commercial jets have been fitted with huge barrels of at least 49 different kinds of documented chemical poisons. Barium is toxic to all mammals. Aluminum is known to diminish kidney function and destroy brain cells and cognitive function. A problem, a serious problem.
Patent number 5003186 describes cooling the Earth with metal oxides sprayed into the stratosphere.
And I thought, well, geez, this is what I do for a living. I was finding tons and tons of large quantities of aluminum, barium, strontium in the forms of oxides and sulfates. Instead of protecting the people, we are poisoning the people.
Detox and prevent metal poisoning at epicminerals.net. I know that these climate change freaks are going to see these spraying of poison in the skies, and they're going to say, well, it's worth it if it saves us from global warming. Guys, it's all fake. They're poisoning us. Go to epicminerals.net. It's a spray in your mouth. Just do it in the morning. My wife, Ashley, says it is brain fog. Be gone. It passes the blood-brain barrier. Check it out. epicminerals.net, promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. Now, let us begin with our first piece from the brilliant Seth Keshel. What happens to Philadelphia when ballot harvesting goes mainstream? Topic: Elections by Captain Seth Keshel. Now in its 6th month, the precinct mapping project is rounding the corner in Pennsylvania, having completed detailed data packages for all but 6 major counties. Just this week, I have retouched the mapping for Philadelphia County, the major driver of statewide Democrat victories for as far back as the mind can recall. The county's data is most easily digestible and discernible when organized by ward, rather than boiled all the way down to the precinct level, so that the ward will be our unit of measure in this article. This piece will show not only how devastating Philly's Democrat margins are, but how futile it is for non-leftists to think permanently enshrining ballot harvesting by pushing ahead to try to beat them at their own game is a recipe for long-term victory. Philadelphia County, Pennsylvania, Precinct Watch Map Presidential Election, November 3rd, 2020. Likelihood of fraud based on degree of divergence from trends in voter registration as established by publicly available county and state data. Red is high or likely fraud, green low or no fraud, yellow suspect possible fraud, gray NA eliminated likely due to redistricting. Philadelphia County reported 743,966 votes in the 2020 quasi-election, with a census-reported population of 1,603,797. That means if we regard every vote as authentic and legal, which they are most certainly not, then 1 out of every 2.16 people voted. Now, let's take a moderately Republican suburban county, Lancaster, for a test case. Lancaster reportedly contains 552,984 residents as of the 2020 census and reported 281,375 votes, meaning 1 out of every 1.97 people voted. Applying that same improved ratio to Philadelphia, which is now possible thanks to automatic voter registration, we would get 814,110 votes reported from there for an increase of 70,144 ballots/votes. Those would presumably be scooped up by ballot harvesting, which is still not legal in Pennsylvania, but probably will be by the next legislative session after Republicans take up the practice where legal, while the Democrats do it everywhere where legal and where not legal, including Philadelphia. So, can't the Republicans learn how to harvest ballots and win too? Let's see how this works out in Philadelphia, which seems somewhat inflated, but shows 46 of 66 wards with a low indication of election manipulation in 2020 and an overall shift of 3.6% toward Trump in one cycle and a trend of 7.9% since 2012. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Biden managed to surpass not only Barack Obama's 2008 high watermark in Pennsylvania for votes, but also Trump's new record for votes, all while doing worse in Philadelphia. What this means is that while 7 wards rate high and 13 rate moderate for election manipulation, ballot stuffing in 2020, the focus was on bloating Biden's vote totals elsewhere, like Montgomery, Berks, Bucks, Delaware, York, Lancaster, and other large counties in the eastern portion of the state. Look there, not here. Biden was certified with a victory margin of 80,555 votes over Trump. Here are some margins in Philadelphia in wards with a low indication of election manipulation. In other words, ones that don't show any increase in cheat from 2016. Ward 5. Biden, 86.1%. Trump, 12.9%, with a margin of 18,530 votes. Ward 8. Biden, 86% to Trump's 13%. Margin, 18,456 votes. Ward 34. Biden, 94.2% to Trump's 5.1% for a margin of 17,000 votes. Ward 40. Biden, 91.3% to Trump's 8.2%, margin 16,506. Ward 50. Biden, 96.8% to Trump's 2.7% for a margin of 15,419. Put it all together, and what do you get? a Biden margin of 85,006, enough to provide the margin of victory as certified in 2020, notwithstanding the wards that are clearly corrupt, like wards 21 or 36, which appear bloated by thousands. Let's go ahead and assume Trump will perform exponentially better with black voters and split these 70,144 new ballots brought along by automatic voter registration and a legal stamp of approval to ballot harvesting 75 to 25, a shift favoring Trump heavily. And we get this. Biden, 52,608. Trump, 17,536. Margin, Biden by 35,072. Whereas Philadelphia County was worth 17,062 votes in margin less for Clinton than it was for Obama the year Pennsylvania flipped, and 3,972 less for Biden than it was for Clinton, even with some bloat in the vote. All of it would be easily made up and then some by going with the path of least resistance on ballot harvesting, even if Trump only loses these heavily Democrat wards 75-25, which is unlikely, if the outstanding ballots are harvested up rather than deliberately voted in the other direction. If we apply an increase of 9.4% in total ballots, the same as in Philadelphia, to Trump stronghold Schuylkill, pronounced Skullkill. Thank you, Tony Shoup. Skullkill County, which has suffered major depopulation since its census high in 1930, down 92,456 residents since then. We add 6,651 ballots if they went 70-30 for Trump, consistent with a highly deflated 2020 margin. We get a dividend like this. Biden, 1,995. Trump, 4,656. Margin, Trump, plus 2,661. Skullkill is the 25th largest county in Pennsylvania and one of the strongest for Trump in the upper half of population by percentage share of the vote. Apply the same Philadelphia math to the inner city precincts of Pittsburgh and the low rent areas of Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, and Bucks counties, as well as the various universities statewide, and you will see the Republican Party has its math done by complete fools. Conclusion. 1. Republicans pushing for ballot harvesting to be mainstreamed or put into law by states like Pennsylvania are falling into a trap that will artificially enhance turnout of places that don't vote unless Barack Obama is on the ticket, too. Ballot harvesting is the equalizer that makes a generic Democrat have a guarantee of Obama-like performance. 3. Widespread ballot harvesting will refurbish the Democrat strength of many industrial state urban centers that have elapsed since Bill Clinton and Barack Obama blew them out, namely Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Minneapolis-St. Paul. All right, that is the first one I'm going to do from Seth Keshel. You're going to find him at skeshel.substack.com. That's S, the letter S, Keshel, Keshel.substack.com. Statistical guru and general patriot, one of the first people out there to really, really prove statistically that 2020 was rigged and stolen. All right, let's check out another one from Seth. Here we go. The greatest George Washington story you've probably never read. Long before he rose to glory as a founding father, young Washington was miraculously preserved and prepared for a greater calling. By Captain Seth Keshel. I test drove a vehicle a couple of months ago and did so with the dealership's 20-something-year-old salesman in the back as my chaperone. He was in college, and I used the test drive as an opportunity to evaluate his knowledge and, if necessary, drive home a few points about things I've learned in my journey. After I learned he was not even yet alive on 9/11, one thing that struck me as both improbable and troublesome is that he had no idea that the elder George Bush, president number 41, had served as president a decade before he, the salesman, had been born. This would be akin to me not knowing Richard Nixon had been president. He reeled off the presidents he did know of and, fortunately, managed to recall our first president, George Washington. Washington is one of history's greatest men, complete with his flaws and failures, including many lost battles in the opening years of the American Revolution. Students of history, particularly those fond of the early founders, are generally familiar with Washington's famous Christmas crossing of the icy Delaware River in 1776, which launched from modern-day Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and succeeded in destroying an enemy garrison filled with mercenaries across the way in New Jersey. It ended an otherwise tough year on a high point, had been featured in many paintings and literary works, and is the most well-known of Washington's badass exploits. Recently, I read an excerpt from Ron Chernow's biography, Washington: A Life, that added incredible detail to Washington's heroic exploits at the Battle of the Monongahela near present-day Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on July 9, 1755, a resounding British defeat at the hands of French troops and their Native American allies, who used densely wooded terrain and high ground in the bloody rout. In these days, before the British formally declared war on the French, formally commencing the French and Indian War, Washington served as an aide to General Edward Braddock, who, despite Washington's sincere counsel and knowledge as a land surveyor, insisted on fighting in the old European style and hauling massive supply and artillery trains through extremely inhospitable terrain. The British, responding to French encroachment on their claims near Lake Erie, trekked to the Ohio country from the south, hauling Washington, just 23 years old at the time, by wagon, because he'd been weakened to the point of death by a serious bout with dysentery. As soon as he made a turn for the better, all hell broke loose. The British regulars, who had superior numbers, were no match for the natives on their own hunting grounds, and were so blinded by the fog of battle they began firing on one another. Braddock sustained a mortal wound, perhaps from one of his own men, and ordered Washington to the front to relay orders and organize a retreat. Washington made for a large target in his day, heavily muscled and over 6 feet in height and clothed in great splendor with a tailor-made coat and customized hat. The tribes fighting with the French noticed the Virginian and opened fire, concentrating so many rounds at him that he emerged with his wardrobe tattered with bullet holes, having been forced to change horses twice because 2 had been shot out from under him. Yet no round struck Washington himself, and he emerged from this massive defeat, in which the British were crushed at a greater than 10-to-1 casualty ratio, as an emerging hero who saved Braddock's men from utter ruin. As such, Washington was preserved to fight another day and went on to lead his new nation, the United States, to military victory over the crown he had once been so loyal to just decades before. Here is the fascinating excerpt from Chernow's book. In Braddock's crushing defeat, Washington had established an indelible image as a fearless young soldier who never flinched from danger and enjoyed a special intimacy with death. He had dodged so many bullets that he might have suspected he would escape the ancestral curse of his short-lived family. To Jack, Washington speculated that he was still alive by the miraculous care of Providence that protected me beyond all human expectation. I had 4 bullets through my coat and 2 horses shot under, and yet escaped unhurt. In a stupendous stroke of prophecy, a Presbyterian minister, Samuel Davis, predicted that the heroic youth Colonel Washington was being groomed by God for higher things. I cannot but hope Providence has hitherto preserved him in so signal a manner for some important service to his country. Washington's daring do even fostered a lasting mystique among the Indians. A folk belief existed among some North American tribes that certain warriors enjoyed supernatural protection from death in battle, and this mythic stature was projected onto Washington. 15 years later, he encountered an Indian chief who distinctly recalled seeing him at the battle by the Monongahela and told how he had ordered his warriors without success to fire directly at him. The chief had concluded that some great spirit would guide him to momentous things in the future. Why, yes, it does appear that God intended for George Washington to make it out of the Ohio country alive. It was so obvious that even Washington's one-time enemies considered it indisputable fact. For Washington, a prominent target who drew the undivided attention of his enemies, to have not even been so much as wounded in a kill zone, with hundreds of his fellow men cut down around him, was a miracle in its own right. For a rival chief to remember him in great detail many years later appears to be divine confirmation that God would make Washington great even in the eyes of those who wanted him dead, and that he should bear down and carry out the task ahead of him, delivering a military victory over the greatest fighting force the world had ever known. Imagine how Washington must have felt hearing that story told to him in reverse for the first time. America's founding was, and truly is, miraculous. 4 for the free. 1. Age doesn't dictate greatness. Washington was 23 when he saved his men from being annihilated, and had already been in positions of authority prior to the Battle of the Monongahela. 2. Lessons learned. 2 decades later, Washington was given an even greater task, leading the Continental Army. He never forgot the sight of seeing the British routed on North American soil, and employed many of the same guerrilla tactics the natives used against Braddock's men in 1755. 3. If God calls you, nothing can stop you. The great spirit the chief spoke of, God himself, afforded Washington the training he would need for greater things and preserved his life to carry out his purpose. Notably, Washington came from a family of men who died young and was painfully aware of that fact all his life. He died just 2 months short of his 68th birthday. A long life for a Washington. 4. Adapt and overcome. In addition to having his uniform littered with bullet holes, Washington also had 2 horses shot out from underneath him. In pursuit of his mission, he let nothing stand in the way. Washington was in the zone and shook off illness and negativity at the right time. History's clutch performers have always risen to the occasion. All right, that is my friend Seth Keshel. Check him out at skeshel.substack.com. And now, continuing the tradition of work smart, not hard, let us do an audio file for the great Brian Cates at briancates.substack.com. Aw, gee. Donald Trump got away yet again. At this point, if you're surprised they can't stop him, you're not very bright. By Brian Cates. Well, my goodness. Things certainly have taken a very strange and very bizarre turns over the past 2 weeks, especially if you hate Donald J. Trump and you're hoping to see him destroyed at some point this year. On top of Trump assuming operational control of the Republican National Committee when his hand-picked team of Michael Whatley and his daughter-in-law Lara Trump assumed command, as the ousted Ronna McDaniel ran straight to NBC News for a cushy job as a talking head. Trump haters have now been denied their long-hoped-for spectacle of a beaten Trump being forced to stand helplessly by and watch a triumphant New York Attorney General Letitia James begin seizing his properties. Anybody who knew how the judicial system is supposed to work, especially the appeals courts, would have known that James's and Judge Arthur Engoron's blatantly partisan kangaroo court hit job on Trump, where they demanded an impossible $464 million bond to post, was not going to survive a fair judicial review. And indeed, it did not. A New York appellate court lowered Trump's bond from the absurdly high $464 million set by Judge Engoron to only $175 million. In win for Trump, appeals court lowers his bond to $175 million in civil fraud case. The ruling also delays enforcement of the $464 million judgment by 10 days. As he gave an impromptu press conference outside the courthouse immediately following the appellate court's ruling, a media firestorm was already developing as fake news commentators and Trump-hating political figures began melting down as they realized that Trump had escaped destruction yet again. Adding to their absolute fury that Trump was not going to have his assets seized by James after all, was the breaking news that Trump had just added over $1 billion to his net worth due to the DWAC merger going live and the stock jumping up by 35%. At a current net worth of $6.5 billion, the reduced $175 million bond represents a mere 2.7% of Trump's net worth. Colin Rugg on Twitter, just in. Donald Trump's net worth jumps to $6.5 billion, making today Trump's single greatest day ever for his wealth. At this very moment, Trump's $175 million bond in the New York fraud case makes up just 2.7% of his net worth. The sudden jump in Trump's net worth is thanks to Trump Media's merger with Digital World Acquisition Corp. DWAC shares jumped 35% today after the 29-month-long merger process went through. Trump has a 58% stake in the company that will soon be trading under the DJT ticker symbol. The former president will not be able to cash in on any of his shares for about 6 months. His net worth will likely be volatile going forward. Imagine the double whammy of waking up expecting to see Trump getting his assets seized by James, and instead he's going to easily post a reduced $175 million bond, keep all his New York State real estate holdings, and increase his net worth by over $1 billion, all in one day. The point of what had just happened was driven home as Trump was ending his press conference and was turning away when reporters demanded to know what asset or property Trump was going to put up with the bond company as collateral. In a true boss moment, Trump turned back and informed them he'd be paying the entire bond in cash. Now that he's escaped being bankrupted by Attorney General James and Judge Engoron, the next approaching attempt to interfere in the election is Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's hush money case, which was supposed to start today but has now been delayed indefinitely. I am not sanguine about Bragg's chances of getting a Trump conviction at this point, even from a New York City jury. That's because it appears Bragg is going to stubbornly insist on putting both porn star Stormy Daniels, real name Stephanie Clifford, and former Trump Organization lawyer and professional perjurer Michael Cohen before the jury under oath. If Trump has even halfway competent counsel, in this case, the fact that Cohen has publicly admitted to perjuring himself under oath multiple times, both in the courtroom and in congressional testimony, and Daniels has denied in a signed and sworn statement that she'd ever had sexual relations with Trump and has changed her story back and forth several times, should prove fatal to Bragg's prosecution. If and when the Bragg case ever gets underway, it very likely represents the last best chance for those deeply invested in the lawfare strategy of getting Trump convicted of a criminal offense before the November presidential election. Both of special counsel Jack Smith's cases against Trump in Washington, D.C. and Palm Beach, Florida, currently reside in limbo as multiple rulings from the Supreme Court are awaited before the court calendar can proceed. The loss of all of February and now March and into April very likely means neither the January 6th insurrection case in D.C. nor the classified documents case stemming from the Mar-a-Lago raid in Palm Beach can get underway before Election Day. Although D.C. Judge Tanya Chutkan spent a year giving Smith everything he wanted, Smith himself created this delay by not dealing with the presidential immunity issue early last year. Now he has no one but himself to blame, as Trump haters impatiently wait for the SCOTUS to make its ruling as to whether Trump had immunity as president for his actions on January 6, 2021. So, if you are a Trump hater who was hoping that he'd have been taken out by now by the forces arrayed against him, you've had a very bad month. If they actually could stop Donald Trump, they'd have done it long before now. I confess, I'm truly enjoying the spectacle of certain people setting themselves up again and again on being told, we've got Trump now, and they still believe it, get their hopes up, and then the inevitable rug pull happens. I don't think I'll ever get tired of watching it. That was my friend Brian Cates at briancates.substack.com. Check him out. Give him a follow. Give him a paid subscription if you have the means. These are what these people do for a living. And so if you do have the means and you want to keep it up, let's do it. All right. So I'm going to do a bunch of these wonderful, amazing Sigma game articles because Vox Day is cranking them out. And I got to tell you something. I love it. So I put a little, let's go ahead and present the screen. It is sigmagame.substack.com. So what I'm doing here is if I click the heart, that means I've read it to you. And if I haven't, then it's because I haven't. So the one I'll get to next will be the Sigmas of History. Charles de Gaulle. I think that's Gaulle, but we say Charles de Gaulle, so I'm just going to pronounce it. So we'll just do this right now. Sigmas of History, Charles de Gaulle, the case for the French hero of the Second World War. In which a reader proposes a former French leader as a potential Sigma of historical note. Quote, your work has given me the key to understanding Charles de Gaulle, France's last great president. Everything about him is pure Sigma. From declaring all alone in an office in 1940 London that he was France, from his exit after a failed referendum in 1969 with a very terse statement. Also worth noting that the Constitution of the Fifth Republic was perfectly tailored just for him. He was feared and despised by most of the French political establishment and part of the military, his original core. And every time I see someone hating him with a burning and irrational passion, they're always Gamma or Delta. If you want to learn more, I recommend Les Chaînes qu'on abat by André Malraux. Malraux's book was translated into English as Fallen Oaks. It was deemed significant enough that the April Letter from Paris, published monthly in The Atlantic, was dedicated to it. The book, quote, is based on a recollective conversation that took place between Malraux and General de Gaulle during a luncheon and long afternoon on December 11th, 1969, in de Gaulle's country residence at Colombey. Numerous quotes from the book which give the general's ideas about France, end quote. While I haven't read the book in either French or English yet, what we do know was that de Gaulle, unlike every other French post-World War II leader, was a man of strict principle, a devout Catholic, and also devoted to his wife, Yvonne. I don't think we have considered nearly enough information to make any sort of conclusive judgment, especially since his moral rectitude makes it difficult for us to determine his sexual status. However, There are hints that he was popular with women, as his defeated rival in the 1954 election specifically concocted a set of policies intended, quote, to break de Gaulle's near monopoly of the women's vote. And of course, his insistence on establishing France as a nuclear power in possession of its own force de frappe, in defiance of the Anglo-American establishment, combined with the way in which he was cast aside by the populace once his unique services were no longer required, is also indicative of de Gaulle being a sigma rather than an alpha. However, it may be the photos of de Gaulle that are most convincing. His eyes, in particular, show the same sort of wary yet prideful detachment that can be observed in the portraits of Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, whose Sigma credentials are impeccable, as well as in pictures of Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. It would seem to be more than a bit of a stretch to suggest that the socio-sexual hierarchy rank can, even in part, be determined by the eyes, and yet certain patterns in this regard appear to be taking form in our analyses. And for those of you who may be wondering, a sigma male, the best way to describe it tersely is the alpha male who doesn't want the job. All right. Sigmas of history. Charles de Gaulle. All right, let's try gamma on the spot and then microcommunications. These are short entries. So gamma on the spot. For those of you who don't know, a gamma male is a low status male in the sociosexual hierarchy who secretly thinks of himself as the top guy, and just nobody knows it yet. It's a self-deluded low-status male. Gamma on the spot. Why the use of lol is indicative of low sociosexual hierarchy rank. Rishi Sunak is an Indian Hindu. Although he was never elected to the office by the people of Great Britain, he also happens to be the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, which sufficiently illustrates the abject degree to which the English people have fallen. Once the masters of the empire on which the sun never set, they now have a strange little pagan from one of their former colonies presiding over their government. Despite a short and very bizarre media campaign which genuinely attempted to transform the tiny Conservative Party member into a sex symbol, the little dishy rishi was actually floated before being rapidly abandoned to the unmistakable sound of tens of millions of English vaginas vacuum sealing themselves shut in horrified response. It was always eminently clear that despite being a situational alpha married into one of India's richest families, the diminutive Sunak remains an inveterate gamma with all of the usual gamma behavioral patterns. Note here the contrast between A, the way Giorgia Meloni is leaning away from Sunak and avoiding eye contact with him, and B, Sunak's attentiveness to her is instructive. Consider Sunak's all too typical response to an obvious question that cannot possibly have been unanticipated by either the Prime Minister or his staff. Quote, speaking to BBC Radio Tease this morning, Mr. Sunak was told by host Amy Oakden that the, quote, overwhelming question being asked by her listeners was when the general election date would be. This included listeners asking why he hasn't got the guts to call a general election right now, Oakden said. A laughing Prime Minister replied, well, I've answered that question many times. When it was pointed out by Oakden that he had yet to name a date and pressed him to do so, Mr. Sunak continued to laugh and added, no, unfortunately not. Oakden then replied, why not? Why is that funny? Sorry, why are you laughing about that? Prime Minister responded, because there's a way that we announce general elections and it would be done in a formal and official way, end quote. Of course, There is absolutely nothing funny about when an unpopular government is going to call the general election that is expected to sweep its party from power. Nor can one try to explain the strange behavior away by claiming that the Prime Minister was taken off guard by the question, since it was in the context of a media interview taking place in the aftermath of recent polls reporting his government's near historic levels of unpopularity and dissatisfaction. So, why was Rishi Sunak laughing so uncomfortably at something that wasn't even remotely funny? The answer is because that is what gammas do when they're put under pressure in an environment where they know they cannot give in to their impulse toward rage. The laughter is simply sublimated anger. Those of you just listening, it's worth just opening your eyes to this picture of Rishi Sunak. When a man laughs weirdly and inappropriately under pressure or questioning, it's a reliable sign that he's a gamma. It's entirely normal to behave oddly when suppressing emotion. People often smile inappropriately when they're giving bad news or attempting to hold back their tears. But most men don't laugh under pressure. And they certainly don't laugh weirdly and repeatedly when someone is doing nothing more than asking them a simple and obvious question. Gammas do, and for two reasons. First, they are sublimating their anger. Rishi Sunak was obviously furious that Ms. Oakton dared to ask him, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, a question, however obvious and relevant, that made him feel bad. He doesn't want to talk about anything that draws attention to his failure, because that punctures his gamma delusion bubble in which he is a great success who is much loved by the people. Second, they're doing that weird gamma thing wherein the gamma imagines how he thinks an alpha would behave in the situation and thereby exhibits social superiority by imitating this imaginary behavior. No one is smoother or more self-confident than the gamma in his own mind. When a gamma directs a LOL or an LMAO or even an ROTFLMAO at you, what he is attempting to do is demonstrate his imagined social superiority to you while simultaneously alleviating the anger that he feels by the threat you pose to his self-esteem. The secret king always wins because he is above all social conflict, and any attempt to question him or contest his status can only merit dismissive laughter. Gamma on the spot, y'all. All right, finally, microcommunications. How even short bursts of communication can be sociosexual hierarchy significant. As I pointed out yesterday in the post about the British Prime Minister's nervous laughter in response to being asked an obvious question that exposed his failures as a leader, use of the various forms of the text lol tend to be indicative of low sociosexual hierarchy status. Note the words tend to be indicative in particular. As with most things SSH related, indeed, as with most things related to the human condition, this is not a binary state. Ironically, it is most likely to be the gammas who will attempt to transform this observation into an implacable and ironclad rule. You said lol in a group chat. That proves you're a gamma. Of course, one data point proves nothing at all. In certain contexts, such as an alpha CEO responding to the 37th meme sent to him that day by his beautiful wife while he's in a meeting, a brief lol probably means nothing more than, for the love of all that is good and holy, woman, stop sending me pictures of cute animals doing funny things every 15 minutes. Especially if his entire set of responses consists of alternating lol and thumbs up. I coming, mommy. Then again, it's hard to not appreciate a good dog meme. Oh, that is a good dog meme. Look at that. Look at that. That's wonderful. Okay. Anyway, every aspect of the human condition and all aspects of the sociosexual hierarchy are subject to context and the probability gradient. The more you attempt to force observed pattern, context, and probability into binary rules that you apply to others, the more often you will get it wrong. In short, never be a spurg. Spurg is short for Asperger's. About these things. They are merely analytical tools, a starting point for a hypothesis that will either be falsified or confirmed through future observation. The more you do it, the easier it is. One reason I can so quickly identify a gamma posting the comment on the internet or a Bravo playing situational alpha in an office environment is because I've been observing these things for literal decades. I may not have articulated the terms for these things until 2011, but I've been noticing and paying close attention to the behavioral patterns since college. One, tell, means nothing in itself, but it immediately narrows down the field of probabilities. Take, for example, the humble lol, and consider your automatic response to and interpretation of each of the following short responses in the context of a public group chat in which someone has posted something mildly amusing. Lol, haha, whatever, LMAO, emoji pictured here, ha, very ha, and then the crying, laughing emoji, ROTFL, MAO, and then I weep for humanity. Now, imagine that the mildly amusing thing was posted by a woman. How does that contextual shift adjust your interpretation of the various responses? And how about if it was posted on a work chat by the boss, and all of the responses are from his subordinates? All I see is gammas, gammas everywhere. Whatever shall I do? The information conveyed, even by micro communications, is just one of the reasons why it is futile to attempt to mask your behavioral patterns. In order to modify them, you must first know and understand what they are. It is possible to a degree, but it is much harder than most men imagine, and even harder to do successfully on a reliable basis. That is microcommunications. Let's see. Make sure I get. Have I done the science of female competition? I feel like I have. Let's see. Is there anything else? Oh, there's another one. Okay, so I'm going to do this one too. And let's see. On this show, we've gone to 47 minutes, but 12 real rules for life. Obviously, I haven't read that one yet, and I need to. So, man, he posts a lot on this blog. It's freaking awesome. 12 real rules for life from Jordanetics, a journey into the mind of humanity's greatest thinker. And by the way, this is a book that Vox Day wrote about Jordan Peterson. All is vanity. What it is that we must bestow our care and diligence upon, even upon this only, that our minds and wills be just, that our actions be charitable, that our speech be never deceitful, and that our understanding be not subject to error, that our inclination be always set to embrace whatsoever shall happen unto us. Marcus Aurelius. In light of my criticism and open contempt for Jordan Peterson's 12 rules on both the superficial and secret levels, I am occasionally asked to provide 12 alternative rules that would prove more effective for the individual seeking to improve his life. After a modicum of reflection, these are my suggestions drawn from 50 years of various successes and failures. 1. Embrace the iron. Lifting weights will not only help you stand up straight, it will make you stronger, healthier, and more confident. The iron teaches the weak to be strong, and it teaches the strong to be humble. 2. Take the wheel. You are the ultimate architect of your own decisions and actions. Even if you were dealt a bad card by life, even if your genetics are inferior, your upbringing was terrible, and your instincts are suboptimal, you are the only one who can improve yourself. You are driving, and only you can determine the destination. 3. Be the friend you want to have. Smiles are contagious. Loyalty inspires loyalty. Stand by those who stand by you. Give every friend who fails you a second chance. Only abandon those who have repeatedly proven they cannot be trusted and do not wish you well. 4. Envision perfection and pursue excellence. You will never achieve perfection, but if you envision it and you strive for it, you may well achieve success and perhaps even excellence. 5. Put a ring on it. Marriage is the manifestation of love. Children are the manifestation of hope. Raising a family to serve as the foundation of future generations is how man rebels against an uncaring universe, a fallen world, and the spirits of despair and destruction. Yes, there are real risks, especially in the current social and legal environment, but they are well worth taking nevertheless. 6. Set your face against evil. You will encounter evil within and evil without on a daily basis. Stand against all of it without fear, without hesitation, and without remorse. And when you fail, when you give in to temptation, when you are defeated, regroup, repent, and rise again. 2. 7. Do what is right. Learn to listen to the still, small voice of conscience. Do what you know to be right, not what you can rationalize, justify, or excuse. If you have to talk yourself into something, then you probably already know in your heart of hearts that you are doing the wrong thing. 8. Tell the truth in kindness. It is too hard and too exhausting to spend all your mental energies trying to keep track of an ever-growing multitude of exaggerations, false narratives, self-serving spins, and outright lies. Just tell the truth as you best understand it without taking pride in it or using it to hurt others. 9. Learn the easy way. You will always encounter those who are stronger, smarter, and more successful than you are. Rather than envying them or attempting to tear them down to make yourself feel better, do your best to learn from them and apply those lessons to your own life. It is considerably easier and more efficient to learn from the mistakes of others than it is to make all of those same mistakes yourself. 10. Believe the mirror. The most reliably self-destructive mistake you can make is to lie to yourself about who, what, and where you are, because doing so precludes any real self-improvement. Be ruthless with your self-assessments without wallowing in self-pity or despair. 11. Get back on the horse. Perseverance is one of the most important skills a man can develop. There is absolutely no substitute for the confidence and the courage that comes from the certain knowledge that you will get up again after an opponent or life knocks you down. 12. Find a best friend. Dogs teach us many things, perhaps the most important of which is what unconditional love is. No matter how rich and successful a man may be, there is no life that the addition of a dog would not considerably improve. And yes, all dogs go to heaven, obviously, because heaven would not be paradise without them. That was really nice. Go to epicthreads.tv, guys. Check out this lemongrass and poppy seed soap. Freaking amazing. Epicthreads.tv. We've got so many of these amazing artisan soaps at epicthreads.tv. Epicthreads.tv. Each one of these has a different blend of essential oils. And wait, is it essential oils? I think it's essential oils in the hard bars and some kind of other oil. And they all have like their own themes. This is called Galaxy Quest. And you can't really tell, but this thing, you can sort of tell here. It's like it's a piece of the earth, like a hard rock from a cave. Look at that glitter. They can make these this way. Same thing, except it's a grapefruit. Yeah, that's grapefruit. Guys, epicthreads.tv, artisan soaps. You will not regret getting that. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to round out the show. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow.
president that God ever created.